Ai, tungassuritsi Felix-aupalunguvunga puvernitummiutsajauvunga uhaqtiulangavunga pissimatsunga isumakkut ilinniavinganit taanna isumakkut saqqitilaujanga kaillatuigumaratta ilinniatinit. Hello, and welcome to the Isuma School Perseverance podcast. This year, Isuma is bringing you a series of podcast episodes around the topic of school perseverance. On these episodes, you will hear stories, testimonials, and experiences coming from school staff, teachers, leaders, students, and community members from Nunavik. Our guests discuss healthy lifestyles, their education journey, family life, and share their insights, tips, and tricks on how the community as a whole can contribute towards school perseverance. My name is Felix Aupaluk, and I will be your host for this season of the Isuma School Perseverance podcast. On today's episode, we're here in Quaqtaq, Nunavik, and we have two guests, Vicky and Kayla. I would like to give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm from Quaqtaq. I'm 29 years old. I'm a teacher here in Quaqtaq. I teach grade 3 and 4 English. I was born and raised in Montreal, but I moved here 5 years ago to be a teacher.
Welcome on the podcast.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Teresa Annanack. I'm 28 years old and I grew up in Quaqtaq, but I'm from Quaqtaq and I'm back in Quaqtaq for the past couple of years now. I am working at the dentist right now as a dental assistant. And I'm happy to be in Quaqtaq.
Awesome. So, Vicky, can you tell me about the first day that you applied to school? How were you feeling? What were your thoughts on that one day that you applied?
I was very excited. I was writing on a piece of paper nonstop for like 3 hours. And then after I was writing, I put everything on the laptop. And it was really exciting. I was nervous, I was scared, and I was excited.
Awesome. And while you spent time in university, what kind of experience did you gain during your time you were at Bishop's University? What kind of experience would you say that you gained during your time there?
The kind of experience I gained while I was there was the knowledge that colonialism is the reason why we're still idle. And the system was made so we would basically slowly just kill ourselves off. So I find the system needs to change, and it's 2024 now. We got to stop lying to all the people about the reality of Canada and how we have professors that, you know, they got knowledge through the textbooks, but they don't really have knowledge through the real world. So when I was having issues with a professor and I was trying to find a middle ground with her, she had just told me to quit her class. She told me to drop out. And I was starting to get really triggered. And I was like, does this professor not know that Inuit have a stereotype of just being a dropout when we're not even given a chance?
Yeah. So that was during one of your courses at during your undergrad. How did you what was your reaction to that? What was your immediate reaction when you went through that situation?
That was my first week of my first semester, and I was like, is this what university is? Like, if you can't understand what the professor's saying, they just tell you to drop the class. And I was like starting to feel like I was the bad person, like I did something wrong. So I went to go see the Indigenous support group, and when I had told them about it, I was feeling guilty because me and the professor, when we were having that conversation, she was telling me like that if I can't understand her, you might as well drop her class. So when I went to go see the Indigenous support group, they were saying you did nothing wrong. You were trying to stand up for yourself. Like you don't have to worry about it. So when they went to go have a conversation with her, with the dean and the chair, they had a meeting without me. And so they had set up a meeting with me the next week. And when I had went there, she had told the principal, or not the principal, the dean and the chair, that she had looked for a solution for me before she had told me to drop her class. And we were talking with a talking rock. Well, people passed it around and they had their turn. I couldn't wait to take that rock back to tell her, like, it's not cool that you're lying in front of these people. You had told me to just drop your class. You never looked for a solution. So during my first semester, I had such a hard time because I was already in her class in the beginning. Then I had to leave her class. I went to philosophy, and in philosophy they have a different mentality. So I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. I wasn't sure if I was made for the colonial system. I felt like I wasn't colonized enough, but I always felt like I was enough. But in these systems, it felt like I was not enough.
Yeah, I get what you mean. That actually leads me to as you talk about that, it leads me to my next question. Were you the only Inuk student in your courses?
I had another Inuk student who was from Nunavik as well in that course.
So did that, let's say, okay, there was two of you. Did it make you feel like, did you feel like you had sort of more support, or did you feel safer when you had someone else from Nunavik? Did you wish there was more Nunavik mute studying there?
It was nice to have another Inuk being a student there, because the more we only spoke English, the more we lost our Inuktitut words. I would call my mom and I would start off a sentence in Inuktitut but then end it in English, because I wasn't speaking my mother tongue enough that when I was trying to make sentences, I couldn't think of the words. So I would end my sentence in English.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, that's like common across the board, right? Like a lot of people, when they leave Nunavik, they lose Inuktitut. That's certainly been my experience as well. So yeah, I get it. And it's quick too, right? You go there a couple of weeks and then you start speaking English more, or even French. A lot of people go to school in French. So you still got your Inuktitut?
Yeah, once I got back to the community and started having more conversations, it came back. I don't Quaqtaq anymore, and I'm really happy, because when I'm trying to have conversations with the little kids and they can't speak English, or some of them they could, I'm trying to have a conversation with them, but I can't seem to make a sentence. But now it's back and I'm happy it's back.
I have a few comments about what she said. She was talking about how you're trying to find a middle ground between people that learn from textbooks and people that haven't lived real life situations that we have lived. And a lot of the textbooks that they learn from don't even have accurate information. So for me, growing up in Montreal, doing school in Montreal, everything in Montreal, being a student in post-secondary as well, I had a very similar experience, even though I didn't come from the north to go study in the south. I had that same kind of belittling feeling from professors and a lot of stuff. So a lot of my education was standing up for myself, explaining to them what Inuit actually are, and that we're not fictional, we're not from the past, we're still here. And it was like that my whole life. From kindergarten to university, I had that experience of I have to explain who I am and we're still here.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. It's almost like taxing, to always have to explain that on just one person. I'm guessing you were probably oftentimes the only Inuk in your class.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
basically, instead of people doing their research or doing the accurate research, it kind of fell onto you to have to explain everything, but that's
yeah.
heavy.
Yeah. It was heavy. At a point, I was used to it, and sometimes I'd get really frustrated about it. Like, you really don't know what Inuit are, that we're still here, we're still alive, we're still thriving, we're still going through the challenges, but we're still here. So,
well, speaking of challenges, sorry to cut you off.
No,
that's actually the next question. I mean to ask you, what has been the biggest challenge you overcame while studying, but also working in the education field? Because you're also a teacher now. So what's that one challenge?
I think kind of along the lines of what Vicky just said is having the Western ways of education and having the Inuk way of education, and seeing the positive in both and the negative in both has been a challenge, because I teach a grade that's very transitional for the students. So it's the first year that they learn a second language and that they're really immersed in it. And I want them to be successful. I want them to persevere and do good. But at the same time, I understand that the Inuit way of learning and teaching is different than the Western way.
Yeah.
So that's been my challenge, to kind of merge the two together to make it easier for them and to make it make sense for them in terms of education.
Yeah, that's some important work you're doing. So the grade that you teach, the students are coming from Inuktitut. So some of them pick French, some of them pick English. Mm-hmm. So either way, it's a new language. So it's a lot of new information coming in. Before that, it's more like it's natural. It's Inuktitut, and Inuit we learn by watching. So it's kind of like it's a very incremental step from like Inuktitut, and then boom, you're in the classroom. You're learning all this new information in a new language that you probably never heard. So actually, here's my other question. There are probably moments where your students, like, they make you proud. You see their development from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. What's that moment, or those moments that you observe where your students?
I think teaching is a lot of repetition, repeating to them, this is how you do it, this is how you speak. These are rules of basic English or basic math, just simple things like that. And when they say it to me instead of me saying it to them, that makes me proud, because I know that they learned. And I always tell them, if we're going to do any kind of work and they think, oh, it's too easy, I'm like, you know why it's easy? It's because you learned. And they kind of, oh, I learned something. And you kind of see it in their face. It changes, and it makes me really proud that they're proud of themselves to be able to learn.
And that's probably like a satisfying moment for you too as a teacher. You're like, wow, my work is, I've accomplished whatever I had to do, and these kids learned, and they're proud of themselves, and they recognize that they're moving forward in whatever they're learning.
Mm-hmm. Also, just them as people, not necessarily like academically that it has to be education, just seeing them grow as people and teaching them to be kind to each other, and in the setting of community is something that I really try to teach my students. I really work on that with my students, and it is satisfying to see them grow and change, and to see that they understand what you're trying to teach them.
So Vicky, I want to ask you a question. So you grew up in Quaqtaq. You would come to Quaqtaq, where you're originally from, and then you would go down south for education. So those moments where you would feel homesick, what was it like? Did you miss it? What did you miss the most?
home for me was always unknown in the beginning because I've always traveled. I traveled from Quaqtaq to Quaqtaq all my life. I moved to Quaqtaq when I was about 2 years old with my father and my brother. And when school started, I started coming here during the summertime and Christmas time to be with my mother and my family. And when school would start, me and my brother would travel to Quaqtaq to go be with my dad and go to school. So it was always traveling. I was always moving. I would always pack. I started packing when I was a kid, and I used to pack all my toys into a box. So, I didn't want to leave my toys behind. So I would always arrive to Quaqtaq with like a suitcase full of clothes, not even I would wear, and all my toys. And, I would travel until I was a teenager. I stopped bringing my toys. I was always like bringing makeup or all these other stuff that would keep me busy. And I always felt different. I always felt different in Quaqtaq, and then when I came here, I always felt different too, because constantly leaving makes you the different kid. So I had to deal with a lot of bullying. I had to deal with a lot of intimidation, but eventually I was standing up for myself and I stood my ground, and eventually we became really cool. There was conflict in the beginning, and then we became really good friends, and till today we're really good friends. So through all of that, I learned since I was a kid that people often project how they feel onto other people because we're all searching for love. And I started to accept that other people, when they're trying to put onto me, it's because they're searching for love. So that's where my forgiving nature comes from. And constantly moving around, I got to experience a lot of traveling. And in the beginning, I wasn't too much of a fan of it. But now that I'm older, I got to understand all the experiences that I developed over the years traveling, meeting other people, learning their dialects. I was able to tell where people are from just from their dialects. So it was a nice experience all at the end, because I got to experience a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't get to experience when they're in one community. So constantly moving. I have a family in Quaqtaq. I have friends, and I have family and friends here as well. So out of all of that constantly moving, I have a stable foundation.
So a whole lot of traveling. One suitcase for clothes, one suitcase for toys, maybe one suitcase for makeup, and yes, it sounds like all this traveling has shaped your experience in many ways, and also like the ways in which you not relate, but in the ways in which you interact with people. It's kind of like dynamic, right? You were traveling, you were either in Quaqtaq or Quaqtaq or down south, or it sounds like it's shaped the way that like you experience the world now.
Yeah, I also stood up for the kids that were the new kids, because I knew what it was like to be the new kid. So often when they were getting intimidated for being the new kid, I would have their back. I didn't even know their name, and then we would develop a friendship. And it's nice to see them every now and then, either in whichever community or on the plane, because it's a small world up here. Yeah. So we bump into each other here and there, and it's nice memories that I get to cherish.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. That's we kind of like, we live a life, we experience stuff, and then we carry it forward. So thanks for sharing that. Oh, I heard you mention something about bullying. So for everyone listening, people, when they see bullying, we have to call it out every single time. We underestimate how much bullying really affects people, and bullying can sometimes we don't really notice it, especially if it's like kids, they're playing during recess or whatever. As professionals who work with kids, or even as students or just a member of the community, oftentimes we don't really see or hear it, but it's out there, and it really affects people in ways that a lot of folks still don't understand. So yeah, no to bullying. It's just no to bullying. Kayla, what do you have to say
I
about
agree,
that?
no to bullying, but I think it's still very present, not only in the children, but also in the adults, because a lot of the children will mimic what they see, what they live. So I think it's deeper than just the children bullying each other at recess time. It's adults bullying each other in life. So I think we need to learn to be more of a community together as Inuit, as a community of Quaqtaq, as a community of professionals, everything. But I agree, no to bullying. It's something I work hard in my classroom, at work, in my life. It's something everybody can work on, I think.
Which role do parents play in school perseverance? In other words, what's the best way that parents can support the youth, and which kind of effect does it have on the youth?
Parents have a very, very important role in their children's school perseverance and anything that has to do with their success in life. Without the support of parents, there's nothing. The children really thrive when their parents are present. And even just saying goodbye to them in the morning when they're going to school, like, bye, have a good day. That makes a very big difference in the children. So the role of the parents is just to be a support for them. And letting the children know that someone believes in them, and we should be supporting our children 100%. Sometimes it's lacking and it shows. So I think parents have a very, very important role, and I don't think that some of them understand that. They're like, I'll just send them to school, whatever. But just to talk to them, talk to your children. Hey, how was your day at school? Very simple. What did you do today? Oh yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, it's like the small stuff, right?
Very small stuff.
How was your day?
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Yeah, so parents play a very, very important role in school perseverance. And as a teacher, when we do things like teacher-parent meetings, you can tell which parents are very supportive and how much it affects the children's success.
How can the community come together to help those parents better support their children?
We can go very deep or not. Yeah. There's a lot of things in the community that need addressing. So things like addiction, things like trauma, things like healing need to be done in order for us to be successful as a community. What you can do, anybody listening, even you guys, just if you know a parent that has children that are school age, support them. Tell them, you're doing really good. Hey, if you need help one day, I can help you. That sense of community needs to be strengthened, in my opinion. We're faced with many challenges. Suicide epidemic, mental health, illnesses, all these stuff that we can work on as a whole, as a community, and as an individual yourself. It's important to address those things. You can't run away from them and expect positive things to happen. You have to put in the work to have a positive atmosphere at home, in your life, at work, at school, all that stuff. So as a community, it's just be considerate of how other people feel. Treat other people how you want to be treated. And if you don't want to talk to someone, just don't talk to them. A lot of people are so hung up on what's that person doing? I don't like that person. That person doesn't like me. And that causes so much trouble for nothing. Just let them live their lives.
Yeah.
That's something else too. But just support. A lot of support needs to be there. To have a sense of community, especially for the children to succeed, I think. I'd also like to say some of the things I just said are easier said than done, but just thinking about it, just trying to address it is the first step in trying to be successful and to try to support each other, I think.
Great take on it. Vicky, what's your take on this?
Well, the division between Inuit started with religion. When two different religions started coming, they kept saying they're dammaseyik, like they're making you follow the wrong way. So the division starts when colonialism hit. It was dividing the Christians and I don't really know what is the other church? The Anglican, Christian, Protestant, those kind of religions. They were dividing the Inuit slowly that way. And then there was the federal day school where even the boys and the girls were not allowed to be in the same room. It starts from way back. And then slowly when school started, there was division there as well. So it's been going on for a couple decades now, that blindness to bullying, being numb to it. When I was a student at school and I was being bullied or sexualized, anything, that the teachers wouldn't even say anything. I had to stand up for myself. Nobody was going to do it for me. Because these people in these systems are so numb to it that they don't really hear what's happening. They don't really see it anymore because it's so much into how the atmosphere is. So a lot of times I got into trouble because I was standing up for myself, because nobody else is going to do that for me. I was a good girl. I like to learn, and then there was a switch that just turned on when I was tired of being constantly bullied just for being different. I had to isolate myself if I wanted to be safe. It was me constantly being in the office because the teachers were just enabling the bullying to happen because I wasn't going to keep my mouth shut. And it's the kids that pay for the price in the end when they have to stand up for themselves because nobody's doing it for them. They have to feel safe somehow. How are they going to do it when the education system is... There's only one teacher for so many students, and there's only so much that teacher could do or so much that they could hear when they're trying to focus on giving the children education, that there needs to be something more inclusive. I don't know if it would be a round circle so everybody could see each other instead of seeing people's back, or I don't know what they have to change in this atmosphere, but something has to change and the vibe will change for the children as well. Because when I was a student, I had to be in the front because my ears are so sensitive. I could hear the people in the back, but I can't even hear my professor in the front, not my teacher. So even when I was in university, I was in the front, and I couldn't even hear my professor because there was somebody in the back turning the pages of a book. And my hearing is so sensitive that I had to block one ear just to be able to hear the professor in the other ear. So there's some people who have very sensitive ears or stuff like that they get really distracted easily. And when I was in university, I realized that oh yeah, when I was a student, I forgot how sensitive my ears were. I forgot how distractible I am, like all these little stuff. And then my friend was sharing stuff about ADHD, and I was like, I think this whole time I'm very distractible. I'm very sensitive. All these little stuff that everything was starting to make sense that maybe I might have ADHD, but then I was never diagnosed when I was in school, and maybe that would have helped me focus in school. Like all these little stuff that the services we lack, we lack a lot of stuff. So while I was in school, I was like, why is this a disability when I'm working? All these stuff are my best qualities, but when I'm in school, it's called a disability. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to change in these systems, because people who have ADHD, they learn a different way, they process information in a different way, and then we're put into a box with all the rest of the people that aren't neurodivergent, or like just waiting for that diagnosis. I was waiting over 1 year, and I never got a phone call. So I wanted that diagnosis so I could help myself better prepare myself for school. But because even the services lacked down south, that I never even got that assessment. So I knew if I had that assessment earlier, it would have helped me better prepare myself, or focus, or remove my distractions. I was trying to find a middle ground for me so that I could continue, but it was hard without that middle ground. And there's a lot of children in the north who had never had an assessment, and that assessment would help children immensely, because we're very attuned with our body. We're very, like Inuit, they have a huge emotional EQ. So we're really emotional beings as communities as well. We like to share, we like to help, and we do it out of our heart. So I find there's a lot of stuff that needs to be changed, especially in these years of 2020s.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on how to make kids more motivated in your classroom?
I think going back to school, the motivation really needs to come along with the parents, along with the community, working together to make sure that they're going to school. As a teacher, I can't teach a student that's not there. So encouraging the children to just show up is a very big step for them to succeed.
Vicky, what do you think? How do you think we can help the community towards a common goal of school perseverance?
Well, we have all been children before.
Mm-hmm.
Some people forget what it's like to be a child because they want to grow up really quickly. But for me, I always kept my inner child alive, and I tried to take care of her as much as I can. What would help children be more open to their environment and to the people that they're sharing the space with would be showing them their good qualities. Because when we're young and we see other people doing mischievous things, it's so easy to just follow. But if we tell the children, like, oh, you wouldn't want to be treated that way, so don't treat other people that way. You have to reflect when you're how you would want other people to treat you. You give that back. So it's like a giving and a receiving good energy. So when I work with children, because I started working with the kids when I was a teenager. I was working at the day camp, and sometimes there's children that are more extroverted and then the more quiet ones, the introverted ones, and trying to put them into the same activity, it was easy when you take those qualities from the extroverted into the introverted qualities. They have different styles and different ways of communicating. So when I was working with the children, I would tell them like, oh, do this instead of doing that. That way you could help the other person. Once you learn how to do that, you could help. And then the other children, that way it becomes like a domino effect. They start having like a leadership role, or if they don't know, that instead of coming to ask me, they could ask their friends, so I could give time to the other children that also need guidance. So that way we're all working as a team, because we could all learn from each other. Me, I still learn from kids. You know, I still learn to work on my patience or how to solve problems in different ways, because different children have different needs. So it becomes more like you become open-minded, learn different solutions. And when at the end of the summer, when I saw the kids that were more like into two different groups become merging into one, and then they have lasting friendships after that, it's really rewarding to see like just little stuff, their little how they express themselves. It's more open or more fluid. And then working with the younger children, it was different, because each different group have different milestones. So when I'm working with the kids at the daycare, I make sure like when there's the wild one, I make sure like, okay, what can he do? So, or what could she do so they could burn their energy? So I usually bring them outside. We go play outside, so I know they're gonna nap. It's about finding different activities for different outcomes later in the day. Are they gonna burn energy, or are they gonna get bored? If they get bored, they're gonna tend to go do other stuff. So how could I continue stimulating them? How can I continue making sure like they're in good behavior, and how can I find ways so that they could bond with the other kids that they think they're not going to click, but then there's this certain activity that makes them click. It's about finding ways so that the children can bond together, so that they don't constantly keep dividing each other into different groups of different personalities. So I find when you're working with kids, especially because a lot of kids have different needs and different personalities and different qualities, how you could find ways so that they could work together as a team. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Very
it makes
much.
a whole lot of sense.
Okay.
Like I think that's actually you said finding ways and times for kids to bond with each other. That's where the opportunity is, right? Mm-hmm. If they have more opportunity to connect and to share, even if it's just like sometimes sports, meals, talking about their experiences, their classes, their mates, all that stuff. That's where the opportunity is.
From what I'm hearing, it's a lot of relationship building, and it's very, very important as someone that works with children, but also just as a person in general that has to deal with other people. Having relationships built is very, very important for our community and for yourself and as an individual. And as a teacher, seeing a lot of new teachers that come through the community, one of my biggest advice to the newcomers is don't worry about things like academics right off the bat. Build a relationship with your students, build a relationship with the parents, and from there it will be so much easier. So everything that Vicky just talked about, knowing what the strengths are of the youth and who you're working with is key. It helps a lot.
Yeah. And that's a good point that you bring, because a lot of teachers, I'm guessing, are not from Quaqtaq, or they're not from Nunavik. So in order to be able to build that relationship, you also need that currency of trust, right? So what would be your advice to those teachers who come to Nunavik who are trying to build a relationship but haven't quite yet built that currency of trust and reciprocity with their students?
You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You can't come in and be, hey, I'm the authority. This is the only way it's going to happen. You have to be open to learning from the children and to teach them at the same time. And you really have to build those relationships, because they will give you a hard time if you don't have a good relationship with them. So having them being comfortable with you is very important. And if they, like you said, if they can't trust you, if they can't relate to you, then there's no point in trying. It's kind of harsh to say, but you really, really have to work on building that relationship. So how are you? What's your favorite color? What do you like doing? Like, just simple things like that, and showing them that you're not there to just be like, pointing fingers or I'm the boss, you have to listen to me kind of vibe. For them, it's very different when they see that you're an actual human, you're just like them. So that's one of my biggest advice for teachers, just to make yourself vulnerable, make yourself relatable for the children, and just open up. It will help 100%.
I would also like to add, the way I encourage children to keep learning and to continue even though they're making mistakes is to tell them, like, you're made for great things. You're really good. You're still learning. It's the only way to perseverance is to continue making errors and to continue learning, so that you could get to that point where you have enough knowledge that you're gonna ace it. You know what you're doing because you made enough mistakes that you learned from your mistakes, because that's the only way we learn. Some of the people learn the hardest way. Some people, they learn from advice, they take advice, but other people, when they learn it the hard way, they know it's gonna be in there. It's gonna be embedded in their brain. They're gonna know how to do it. They could do it with their eyes closed because they made enough errors that they perfected. They aced it. They have knowledge of the good and the bad. So failing is not always bad. It's an opportunity to learn again in a different light.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We heard two incredible pieces of advice. Kayla, you mentioned something for newcomers, and it's not just teachers, like anyone who comes to Nunavik for the first time, like, building relationships is probably more important than the end goal of whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. So for any newcomer hearing this in Nunavik or Quaqtaq, this is valuable advice. And Vicky, you also mentioned like the small stuff, recognizing the small stuff, comments, daily comments. Hey, you're doing good. You're capable. That's awesome. And then that kind of builds that confidence to want to keep going, and like embedding from what I'm hearing, like whatever they learned, that comes and like it just solidifies whatever it is that they learned in school or even outside of school, because we always talk about school perseverance, but it's not just inside of the classroom. Like if you're out on the land and you're learning to hunt, that whole concept of perseverance is also happening there. Perseverance is not just in the context of the classroom, and I'm sure as a teacher, you can probably testify to that as well. A lot of your students, they're out camping or they're out hunting when it's geese hunting season. They're out there. So how do you How do you see all those different things happening in the community, and how can that contribute to also help them in school?
Well, we talked a little bit earlier about what my biggest challenge is teaching in education here is mixing the Western way of knowledge and education and the Inuit way of learning and education. So me personally was incorporating those themes, those ideas, those values that we learn as Inuit when we're going out camping, where we're going hunting, fishing, whatever, berry picking, You have to have patience. You have to be determined. You have to focus on your goals and to bring those values and those core values into my classroom to teach them in the way that they're meeting the goals of westernized education, colonized education. And just even things like just talking about in class, like, what did you do this weekend? Did you go hunting? And their whole being changed because they love it.
Yeah.
So to consider what their reality is and to bring it into the classroom instead of kind of alienating it or separating it has helped me as a teacher and has helped me as an Inuit teaching English. So just considering those topics and bringing them into the classroom has helped me a lot in my teaching.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's very, like, it's such a common theme. It's like almost like a foot in two worlds, You live in Nunavik. Outside of the community, all there is land. That's what you spend your time doing. But then during the weekdays, you're in the classroom in a building learning stuff that has almost nothing to do with this piece of land. So it's a challenge, but also an opportunity for you as a teacher. Like, how do you think the education system can further help teachers like you who are trying to, sort of incorporate a little more of that land-based pedagogy in the curriculum?
I think that will come from changes in the system, like Vicky talked about. There needs to be that change in order for us to, for it to be more valid in a classroom. So it has to come from our leaders. It has to come from the people that are making the programs that we have to teach. And it connects also with when we're talking about people that learn from textbooks. The textbooks have to be in line with what our reality is. So a lot of changes need to be made for our curriculums, the textbooks, and just the way that we teach in general.
Where should students head if they want to have a healthy lifestyle?
So for healthy lifestyle, it would be really beneficial for the children and the teenagers and the adults in general for them to have a good foundation. Having a routine is really good, so you have something to look forward to, and if you have goals, it's easier to attain those goals when you have a routine because you make time for those projects or for those kind of outcomes you want in your life to be successful. Like, example, if I have a good routine, I do yoga, I get up, I work on my body. It's good to move, especially when you're really stressed, because it releases some stress and it builds a good mindset. Once I get in a good routine doing yoga, I constantly want to do it and I don't want to miss a day. it kind of becomes an addiction, which is not good. So I try to have a balance of, if I'm doing it too much or if I needed a rest that day, I'll take the rest and I won't guilt myself for taking care of my body in a different manner. And so having a routine is really good for your mental health and it's good for your body. And once I have a good routine set, I know okay, I have this much time to sew because I'm going to be making time for these other stuff. So it gives you a good outline of how your day's going to be. And especially if you have children, having routine for the children is really good. So if they go sleep at a certain hour, you'll know they'll be up at this hour. So you have time to start your morning or you have time to do your routines while the kids are still sleeping. I personally don't have children, but I have lived with children and there's children in my family. And it's really good to see how each day it's progressing in a certain way because of how routines are made to make your day predictable. So having a routine and having a healthy lifestyle, it gives you more energy at the end of the week to get all your projects done, especially if you do a lot of sewing and if you're really busy and if you have a family on top of it, because you have to make time for each I can't call it a subject.
Yeah.
But each task.
Yeah.
Setting expectations is having a routine sets expectations in your life. So for children, it's very important for them. They should know when they're going to eat because they need to be fed. And if they go home, they should know, oh, my mom's coming at 5 o'clock because she finishes work at 5 o'clock. So they already have those expectations that you should be able to follow through with a routine. Not having them guess when is my next meal, having a routine set in place will help that. So they're not left in the dark about certain things. It doesn't have to be about food only, but when should I be taking my shower? At night, is it better? In the morning? It's different for everybody, but to have a routine set in place really helps just your day-to-day life, and especially in children, for them to be able to develop that at a young age will help them in the future when they have to live alone, when they make their own families, and to set their own expectations for themselves and to continue a healthy lifestyle. So routines, in my opinion, are very important, and it doesn't have to be very calculated. Tukkiapik, like in the morning we're gonna eat a breakfast and we're gonna do that, brush my teeth, go to school. Setting that routine will help you, and it's okay to change it. Like Vicky said, don't be hard on yourself because you didn't sweep the floor today.
Yeah.
You have to have a balance, yeah, but also some, you have to give yourself some space as well in your routine.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be very set in stone, but from what I've seen working as a teacher, the children that have routines are more likely to succeed, just in general.
Yeah.
So routines are a very important part of healthy lifestyles. And I recently became a mother, so my baby is 2 years old now. And I learned the hard way that in order to discipline my child, I have to discipline myself. So that's something that I'd like to say to parents out there. Sometimes it's really, really hard to teach your children things like routine if you don't have one. So disciplining your children means disciplining yourself, but on the long run, it's so worth it. And it goes to healthy lifestyles.
You heard it here first. Routines, they can change a whole life, right? Like if you do the same thing every day and it doesn't have to be a long period of time. Like let's say someone wants to stop smoking. You embed that routine of every time you want to smoke a cigarette, every 3 cigarettes, instead of doing that, you go drink a glass of water. If you do that over like 3 months, that's progress, that's perseverance. So we can kind of apply to a bunch of stuff. You mentioned you're a mom now, so it's routine in your professional life, routine in your personal life, but also in parenthood. So it's a really important, it's a tool that's out there for everyone to use, incorporating a routine.
Yes. If we work together and if we continue to learn from each other, we're going to rise together. So it's really heartwarming for me to see Inuit working together, especially if working for brighter futures. So having this kind of podcast is really nice, so that we could start having these type of conversations, especially with people that are going to be the next generation. We constantly talk about next generations, but we have to take action now. We have to share our voices, our opinions, our ideas. We have to brainstorm together, because these type of systems, they're in place. But then if we actually want to see us moving forward, we have to do that together. And we have to work together for each other, for the future. And we will prosper that way. It's not through the outside world, it's within us.
I'll follow up on a few things that Vicky just said. Don't be afraid to open up to others that are like you. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to talk about things that maybe you don't necessarily feel is important to talk about. So for example, things that are more negative, it's still important to talk about it, because that's the only way that we will get through it together. So having that openness with each other will help a lot. And share the good things, share the bad things. That's what we're there for, if we want to be together and grow together and move forward together. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a very good message, and I'm sure a lot of people are gonna gain from both your insights. Our conversation was like very general. We talked about a lot of stuff, but like you said, a lot of important stuff. You have to recognize all of it, the good and the bad. That's how we like move forward. So yeah, it sounds like you're doing amazing work with your classroom. How many classrooms do you have? One classroom.
Yep.
And that's already enough work, right?
Yep.
So
I do have a message for students that are post-secondary students. I grew up in Montreal and I found it really hard, but I can't imagine moving away from your home in Nunavik to go study somewhere else where you're not in your comfort zone. You don't have your people around you. So the biggest thing is keep in touch with your loved ones, your friends, your family. And also, if you want to persevere in school academically, is just showing up. That was one big thing for me in college and in university. Even if I didn't do the work, even if my professors were going to be like, oh, you didn't do your homework. Just being in the classroom made such a big difference of how I understood all the information that they were giving me. So if you're a student right now, go to class. Don't tell yourself, oh, I didn't do the work. I'm just going to miss it, because it will have more negative effects than if you just show up. Just listening to your teacher is very important. And learn about how you learn. So Vicky was talking about her hearing and how she was easily distracted. So she had to sit in the front. So learn yourself what helps you the most and keep doing that, That's important. For me, it was the same way that I had to sit in the front, make sure I was on track, but really just showing up to class, that was the biggest thing.
Thanks for sharing that. Once again, you heard it here first. We're in Quaqtaq, Nunavik. My name is Felix Aupaluk, and we had our two guests here today, Kayla Meeko and Victoria Tukkiapik. Thanks for being on the podcast. And please make sure to keep me and Isuma afloat of the important work you're doing. And thanks for inspiring Nunavik and especially the kids in school who are going through this journey.
Felix.
Thank you for having us.
Inuhatik Kangiqsualujjuaq Nunahaqqa maniqnit. Kayusi tuinnaqit inuusi nungunyangimmat. Developed exclusively for you to enjoy, you will now hear a song titled Sapilirnak, written by Charlie Taqqik, Center Director in Salluit, produced and sung by Kathy Aputiarjuk from Kangiqsualujjuaq, recorded with the help of McCombie Annanack. The artistic cover art is brought to you by Teresa Annanack from Kangiqsualujjuaq, full-time student in multimedia at Collège Montmorency.
Nunavik.